I can see that a little bit with the kind of strand of feminism that Simone de Beauvoir typifies. This is something I've spoken to Abigail Favale about before. She calls herself a Catholic feminist, so she's very much on sex difference. And she pointed out the hilarity of Simone de Beauvoir assuming that women, if they could just be psychologically deconditioned from the violence of reason inflicted upon them by men prohibiting them from education, that we'd all end up in, the last word of her book being, a Marxist brotherhood. And so it's the application of the male unisex standard onto men and women.
But remember, she was writing in French, so I think that's possibly a bit unfair, because in French, grammatically, the man covers the woman. So you use, ILS, il, for groups which have like 10,000 women and one man,
True.
So I wouldn't read too much into that. I agree and disagree with many things about Simone de Beauvoir, but it's a long time since I've read any, so let's not go there, because I don't think I could do myself justice or this conversation justice. Feminism has, if it isn't even a movement, it's many movements, but the task of feminism is an almost uniquely difficult task because motherhood is such a rupture in a woman's life. And it's not the only rupture. Like, women are much more episodic than men.
Yes.
So a woman going through puberty, a girl going through puberty, like boys go through puberty too, but a girl becomes a sort of a sexual being in the world, like very abruptly and much too young at puberty. And, it's sort of almost a precious resource at that point. Like, the most beautiful people in the world, if you look at fashion designs, they just want 14-year-olds, basically. And then you have some period of being, a scarce resource, beautiful, fertile, whatever. You become a mother. That's the most scarce resource that there is in humanity, is the 9 months that you gestate a baby, the year or two that you look after the baby when they can't do anything else. And you need help. Like, we have very difficult and very troublesome pregnancy, childbirth, early child rearing, much more so than most mammals. And then you go through menopause. And that's another big rupture in a woman's life that doesn't exist in, I think, any other mammal except one type of whale. So we're just this very strange animal, but the strangeness is mostly in the women. The men are much more standard. You're much more... you grow, you become peak age, you stay at peak age for quite a long time, and then you kind of fall off. And you're fertile through all of it from about 14. So feminism has to represent these episodic, very different women whose interests are often not very like each other. Like the interests of a childless woman and a mother are not very similar. A woman who's embedded in a man's household, her interests are often aligned with the man's rather than other women's. Child rearing does just keep women at home for a considerable part of their lives, making it very difficult for women to be represented in the political and economic decision-making process of a country. And that's something that I think is permanent. I don't think we can fix or change that, except by constantly leaning against it. So feminism is just a really difficult movement. You're trying to represent the interests of all women when women are just so varied and their interests often are not aligned. So I just don't think it's that surprising that you end up with very different strands of feminism and sometimes contradictory ones. And I mean, I try to talk about women as an embodied reality. I am a mother myself, and I look back to see what I'd said in the book about how feminism had got things right and wrong, and it's a shortish section. Everything's a short section in the book because I was trying to pack so much in. But I said something like, a feminism that doesn't support and create a world that's suitable for mothers is not worthy of the name feminism. But many women are not mothers, and mothers are many other things besides. And that's a very difficult tightrope for a movement to walk. And feminism falls off all the time, and individual women fall off all the time. I don't know why we'd be surprised by that, And then to have somebody pick one bit of it and say, like one bit of what I would say or what somebody else would say, and then say, look, oh, you say this, but other women are like that. Well, bloody hell. We're not men. Like, we're much, much more varied and difficult than men are.
So to pick up on that, I suppose, to trail into one final point before obviously you have to leave. As you've said, the men not having an episodic stage in their life can mean, I think, one of two things. It could mean that you have continuity of personhood, and this could lead you to the disembodied will perspective, which has legitimated a lot of the autogynephiles that are driving this transhumanist transgender movement. Or I think, particularly speaking as a young man, the lack of initiation rituals that men don't go through now has kind of left them feeling a bit lost. And this was one of my main point of misgivings that I think, I don't know if you've spoken to Mary Harrington in private about this, but in her book, it's kind of a contrast to yours. One of the points you made in there was the disruption of male-only spaces as akin to the ending of segregation in the Jim Crow South.
Yeah.
And that did annoy me a bit. Because I don't think it's an apt comparison, because of course racial differences are nothing like sexual differences. And as you said, men and women have very different. Not only is the power dynamic very different between men and women, which is why a man should never enter a woman's space, but between men and men, it mediates conflict.
I don't think I ever say there shouldn't be any men's spaces. I say that a lot of men's spaces are where women were specifically locked out. Because, I mean, among the men's spaces, what I'm talking about men's spaces in the book is things like the professions, all of the professions. Like, they were male-only spaces. Universities were male-only spaces. The voting booth was a male-only space. I don't think you could defend those.
Right.
I mean, I'm a heterosexual woman. I'm married. I have 2 sons. I have 5 brothers. I'm really not anti-man.
No, I've never had that impression.
And I do look at young men and think, gosh, I mean, men are just a bit useless compared with women. I mean, historically and through evolution, in the sense that men are disposable. Like, the thing that men give to the next generation, it's very substitutable, and you don't need very many men. And, women are much more precious. Like, if you look at a tribal group, the precious thing is the fertile women and the babies. That's the resource in a pre-money society. Men are not the resource, and that's why men are corralled into going out and fighting, and their blood's wasted in wars and so on. I often wonder how Freud couldn't have noticed that. Like, the idea that women envied penises, obviously men envy wombs, for goodness sake. Like, that's the scarce resource in humanity, is reproductive capacity, and it's women's, and that's why men have liked to control it. So young men have always had to be given a purpose and a reason and a way to become men, because women don't need that, because it's obvious how we do it. And every time I say these things, people misquote me and say, I think that a woman doesn't matter if she's not a mother. Please put in all those disclaimers. I'm just talking about sort of archetypes here in the way that societies are laid out. So so a lot of cultures try to find some way to make men feel like men, because there isn't a natural, you don't, like, becoming a father is not like becoming a mother. And we don't do that. And we tell young men that what makes you a successful man, like, is things that are just very hard to achieve. Like, we've got rid of a lot of the things that used to be participation ways of feeling good about yourself. For both men and women, but it matters more for men, I think. If you've got rid of the church, you haven't got ways of just being part of the way that your church does stuff, which you don't have to be particularly good at, you just have to show up. We've foolishly, in my opinion, told young men that they don't need to look after mothers and children. I'm always amazed now when I see young men not get up for a pregnant woman on the train, or not help people with their shopping, or help people with their buggies or whatever. It's always women who help you, it's not men. But, men have to be told that there's a purpose. They have to be given a purpose. I don't know if you need an initiation ritual, but that needs some thought. And we're not doing that thinking. We're leaving men to be quite useless and aimless. I mean, I'm not against men-only spaces, because I think, there are times that men want to be with other men. I mean, you've largely got them with computer game type things, and a lot of sport basically is kind of men only in terms of the viewership. What I'm against is stitch-ups, and that's what I was trying to get at in the book. And I really didn't say that there shouldn't be any men only spaces. I said that breaking down the places that men kept women out of to keep them down, that was desegregation. So just to clear up my analogy there.
That's all right. So yeah, to conclude then, to wrap that back around to the Matt Walsh, J.K. Rowling dichotomy, I would say maybe something that I need to think about going away from this is the positive role that men can contribute to the parallel movement with women such as yourself saying, get out of our spaces on a we should be entitled to protection ground. And also the kind of world we're going to build after this contagion stops distracting us. Because I think even though Matt Walsh and Judy Binder will never, ever, ever agree on anything, we do have to learn to live together in some way.
Oh yeah, that's what you were actually asking me about. Sorry, I got very sidetracked onto the men's single-sex spaces. I don't see us working together. But then I don't see feminists really working together much. There's clusters of people, pulling in the same direction. Like, if you're pulling something and you're not actually pulling in opposite directions, you're kind of moving things in the same direction. That's as near as we'd get. Obviously, Matt Walsh did a good thing in bringing the lunacy of what these gender ideologues say to a large audience, and I find that impressive and useful. I think that the world that, I hope I'm not doing the man a disfavour. I was brought up Catholic in a conservative Catholic country, so I don't think I am. I think he's the sort of, pre-Vatican II Catholic.
Hello.
You're pre-Vatican.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I think, you can tell me if I'm being unfair. So I think he's anti-abortion. He's probably anti-contraception. He'd be anti. He would think it's reasonable for men to be the leaders and the head of the family, and the woman as the helpmeet type character. What else? I presume he thinks that gay marriage is wrong, and if he follows the current phraseology of the Catholic Church, that homosexual relationships are objectively disordered. I don't know what he thinks that means for people who are exclusively attracted to their own sex. Like, does that mean that they should just stay without a partner, or what? This is not a vision of the world, to say the least, that is going to attract many of the young people who are currently attracted by trans ideology. In particular, it's not going to attract many of the girls. And the girls are the big majority of them. It's also not going to attract the proto-gay boys, the Richie Herons of the world. Richie is gay.
Yes. And
you just have to accept that the reason he was caught up in this, started with the fact that he was gay and had internalized homophobia. So the two groups that my heart goes out to, and I think this is true for J.K. Rowling as well, are these little proto-gay kids who wonder, why am I so different? And I think Matt Walsh has literally zero to offer those kids. And also the girls, and so I don't want to beef back at Matt Walsh. I don't think it's worth it. But I did write my own newsletter about his reaction to my reaction to his reaction. God, it's so bloody meta.
Tells us all the way down again.
Oh, God, it's painful. In my own newsletter this week, and I said something. Like, I was trying to sharpen up what I'd said, because he was picking out a particular bit that makes it look like I think that traditional marriages are a bad thing. I'm in a traditional marriage. I'm a heterosexual woman. I gave birth twice. My children are more important to me than everything else in my life, and I've always known that they would be, and I've always wanted to be a mother. And I do a very significant amount of care work, and I do not resent that care work at all. So, to the extent that it looked like I think that those things aren't worth doing, or that they're degrading or anything, that's absolutely not what I meant. What I was trying to say was that in Matt Walsh's vision of the world, the men are the actors and the women are the helpmeets. And, women have always been sidelined and positioned as supporting actors in their own lives. Like, we are all supporting actors in other people's lives, and that's fine, and part of growing up is accepting that. Like, we can't all run around the place with the spotlight on us. It's not me the whole time. As you get more mature, you realise it's not all about you. In fact, it's often nothing to do with you. And that you end up, both men and women, doing an awful lot of things willingly, lovingly, for the sake of your family. You get up early, you do shitty jobs, you clean up nappies, you do whatever, and that's fine, that's life. That's what it is to have a family, and families are the best thing. But if you, and in Matt Walsh's film, he really personified this, if you say that the only people who are actually doing anything and thinking anything and being centred are the men, and the women are kind of, orbiting around them, I'm sorry, you're just not going to get through to these girls. You're just not. That's the sex stereotype that makes girls want to be boys more than anything else, that the only way that you can be fully human is to be male. And that's absolutely not only something about Orthodox or traditional Catholicism. Like, that's the meaning of the title The Second Sex. It's the meaning of the title The Female Eunuch. It's what Virginia Woolf said when she said that the power of women, I'm not going to get the wording exactly right, was to hold up a mirror to men and reflect them back to themselves twice the size. To the extent that you don't understand that women and girls are given a vision of what it is to be a woman that is not centred in themselves, in their own bodies, in their own personhood, in their own uniqueness, and men are, you're not going to get through to these girls. So I don't think Matt Walsh helps. in that sense.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.